Well, they're all three pretty much linked, but I think I always say this: like the biggest problem with the Canadian industry is access to capital. I think access to the money and be able to generate the money is critical. There's no point, being big in Canada again. So I'd go money for sure, and probably power, because as an independent, the second biggest problem you have is leverage with any of the gatekeepers, whether it's the Rogers or the whoever. Being able to have leverage in those types of negotiations is critical. Respect is something you earn by what you do. You don't choose it, right? So I wouldn't choose respect. I'd hope to earn it.
And Tara, why are you here today on this panel?
Well, some people I work with have done an excellent job, and I was sent here to represent them. No, I would say the history of MapleCore, jokes aside, MapleCore's founder is a gentleman named Grant Dexter, and he started the company in 1999 with a vision to marry music and technology. So now we would all laugh. But really, in 1999, this was a shocking decision. What? Music and technology? That's crazy. They're enemies. And that was the industry position back then. And I would say the evolution of our business and the growth of our business has really been about respect. We earned respect initially, then we made money, and we kind of took flight, I guess you could say. Initially we had investors and we depended a lot on funding, and then we earned a lot of respect and we were able to grow our business, and then we kind of started earning our own money. And, I'm not sure how you would define power in the context of the music industry particularly, but were we able to secure the Radiohead record in a highly competitive situation? Yes. So power was the third thing that I would say came to us. And I think that was a really bold way to approach entrepreneurial development, to say we're going to go respect first and then go after money. And power kind of is a natural result, I think, of doing what you do well and showing that you can do it at a profit.
Right on. Sarah?
I think in the over 40 years of Anansi's existence, we've earned a lot of respect. We're a highly literary respected company. So we're riding that one big time. And we're really hoping to get some money out of that respect now. And we've been in the black for the last couple of years, which is very exciting for a Canadian publishing company. So I'm going for power. I want to, boot Random House and HarperCollins and Penguin right off the map.
Nathan?
The entire kind of history of my studio is built off making games that are good. The one time that we made a bad game, it was pretty much the worst moment of my life. But even through making mobile games, which nobody cares about or plays or anything like that.
No offense, John.
Oh, he doesn't make games. He doesn't make games.
It's mobile, though.
Yeah. No, what would John's doing? Bang up. Game side, impossible, though. If anybody's making mobile games. Anyways. So when we started out, the only goal was to make good stuff, to make stuff that we could actually be proud of. And through that kind of build up of respect, everything else that we have, whether big or small, it's all come from that. It's all come from being committed to that and not being bullied out of it, because it's very easy to let larger companies who usually write your checks for you the money of the equation. It's very easy to let them push you around, especially in games, because the money flows so specifically. It's milestones. It's you hit it or you don't. And if you don't get paid. So it's very easy to get pushed around. So I think I really, the whole money side, I don't, it's not one of those things where you can, in video games, kind of say money is super important, because you can't.
Now, before I turn over to Raja for a response, I would certainly like to encourage those of you in the audience to either stand up and identify yourself or come to the microphone and share with us your definition of success, what you would pick in terms of choosing between money, power, and respect, and if you have any of your own success stories that you feel either reinforce some of the values that we're discussing or contradict some of the observations that we're having. Raja, would you like to contradict what Nathan was just saying?
I mean, it's an impossible question you're asking, because it's almost the difference between, for me, vision and values, right? I think we all share common values. I don't want to come across as the business jerk who doesn't care about the content. It's quite, those who know me know it's the opposite. We care deeply about our content. We launched a music channel. We're working with these guys, and it's about Canadian emerging talent. And I'm a musician, and I get it. But that's the means to an end, right? The vision is to be a globally successful company. The value is to do it with integrity and to do it with respect.
Now, do you think that's, and I certainly open this to anyone on the panel, do you think that's an intrinsically Canadian perspective to, on the one hand, have that ambitious global ambition, but to have that virtuous spot? And I only say that historically because almost all other imperial powers certainly didn't have that virtuous starting point, right? It was very much about conquering, where it sounds like what we're talking about is a much softer power, a much seductive power when it comes to taking over the world.
I think most of the world's most successful companies share those values. I think what we lack in Canada is the vision, is the bigger vision.
But one of the things I would say is when you when you're talking about going after dollars as a first step, one of the things, and Nathan alluded to it, one of the things you're giving up is power. You're giving up control. You know, you are ceding control,
When
that's
people talk about VC, I kind of barf in my mouth a little bit, because the idea of building something that I don't own and I don't control and that is meant to serve someone else, it's exactly contradictory to the whole purpose of why I started.
I think that is the assumption that most people make, and it's a wrong assumption. And you know, we have, you know, for example, in our company, it's a widely held company. You look at who we've got to invest in our company. It's the former head of Standard Broadcasting, the founders, Gary Slate, the founders of Alliance Atlantis, the ex-CEO of Chum. They give me money, and by having them on my board, they're giving me power. There's a double benefit, right? Like yeah, there's VCs involved in there. But
from my standpoint, at least, that doesn't exist in video games, pretty much ever.
Now, we do have a question from the floor, because I do want to try to bring people in. Gavin is at the back.
It's not to be controversial. I'm not going to ask a why question.
Oh, that's okay. Then sorry.
Yeah,
we're looking for a controversial question. Support Gavin's assertion that if Canada is a global leader when it comes to the interactive, digital, whatever you want to call it, what strategies can you share with your peers, with other people in Canada who as Raja said, should think big? And is there a role for government? Is there a role for government policy in facilitating that type of strategic thinking? Anyone want to jump in?
I think one of the biggest roles is to help Canadian companies maintain control of their IP. At least in the video game space, I think it's, for us, that's how we build value, that's how we build our company, that's how we see ourselves going for the next 25 years, is by making games that are ours. And spreading them out to everyone, rather than having to go to the States for IP to get a game made.
In book publishing, our strategy within the company is that when we buy a book, we buy world rights to that book. And that's a very difficult thing to try to achieve because there are agents who want to split off rights. But from our perspective, if we're going to put in the work on the editorial, on the production, to make the book an indigenous success, then we want to have the right to be able to sell that book globally. And that's proving to be a successful strategy for us, but a very difficult one.
You know, for me, it's I don't agree that we are global leaders. And my whole point is that we could be global leaders. We have the capabilities. I think to me, the government money is risk capital, right? The whole point of it is to help. It should be to help companies take risks. We have the talent that we should be taking big risks and gambling on global audiences. And again, I don't put the blame on the funding. I put it squarely in the hands of the creators.
But your point about leadership, though. I mean, is it the role of government to provide that leadership? And if not, where does that leadership come from? Where does that vision come from that inspires Canadians to see beyond our marketplace?
Entrepreneurialism. I don't think it has anything to do with your Canadian identity. You know, you can look at any business DNA. There are not a lot of entrepreneurial people in business in Canada, but I suspect that is true in many other parts of the world as well. I work at an extremely entrepreneurial company. I've never been in a meeting at Maple where we have said, well, that's the way we do it at Maple. And I've worked at other companies, larger companies, and that is expressly what gets said in almost every situation. Ian and I have known each other for a terrifying number of years. And it's the same thing with Exclaim. I've watched other music magazines go out of print, a large number of them, not to pick on anybody. Whereas I've watched Ian build Exclaim, he never said, well, I'm just a music magazine and that's all I do. The internet evolved, Ian embraced the internet. Ian puts together branded tours. Ian goes out and sponsors things. Ian looks for the next way to develop his business. And to me, it's the same thing with all the people on this panel.
But
The reason we survive is we're entrepreneurial people. We're not looking at something and just saying, like, I'm just going to do that way. And if things don't go my way, I'll try to get more funding. I think
It's the adaptability and the agility. Jill, you've been trying to get in for a bit.
Just because I'm in the video creation business, and there aren't a whole lot of traditional film and television companies that are interested in innovating and partnering to innovate with me. And I've seen 4 of my close friends cross the border to write in the States in the last few months. We really have a problem keeping Canadian creators, writers, screenwriters, the people who will create this content within our borders, because our companies aren't innovative and aren't interested, see it more as industrial and no creative fulfillment like you're looking at. And the funding is just too difficult for an independent like me to access, except for what the kind of funding that the Independent Production Fund has offered to creators, and they're working successfully with independents because they made their funding formula accessible to people who aren't huge corporations.
Well, by saying Gavin asked us strategies, the thing I tell everyone, and even we try to do it in our own companies, is travel more.
Yeah.
Simple answer. Go to more conferences outside of Canada. Even if you're not exactly sure why you're going.
So do you think travel subsidies and travel funding is an example of successful incentives and stimulus?
But it doesn't cost much to go to a conference in New York. You just go.
But we even like.
But what about a conference in Barcelona, for example?
Well, maybe you work your way up to Barcelona.
Nathan, you want to say?
You can literally track the history of my company to getting an export grant. We had no office, no computers, no payroll, no money, nothing, and we managed to. I don't know if we lied a lot or something, but no, we had some very people with good foresight at the OMDC that handed us a small amount of money, and it put us at GDC, and at GDC we met people, and those people turned out to 100% be the people that got us our company started. And I think it seems like such a small thing, right? It's $10,000 or something like that. Like, how can you start a company on $10,000? Well, you can, and it happens all the time if people are willing to, provide that. And I honestly think, like, if there's people, like, every industry has those, like, 1, 2, 3 major conferences, and if you're not at all of them, you're losing business, you're losing money, you're losing the ability to make your products, because you have to be there. Even if there's no reason whatsoever for you to be there, even if you're just there to drink beers. Go and drink beers, and you'll make the best content. Yeah.
But I mean, I think in terms of government policy, their OMDC is great, and on the book publishing side, the feds are good, and they should just be encouraged to continue in that support. I think that's the message, that actually getting out into the world and taking your stuff out into the world is one of the keys to success.
And not have any restrictions on the sense that, like, the company hasn't been in existence for 2 years or so. Use these tools to help small startup companies, because we're 26 people and we started that way with literally like a small grant. So it happens more often than not, and it's happening like crazy in the games industry, specifically in Toronto.
We have a question up front.
Well, it seems to me from listening to all of you that there may have been a moment where you went from project to company. And once you had the company, then the real entrepreneurial work was able to kick in. I'm wondering if any of you guys can talk about the moment that you remember that happened, when you could actually create a solid infrastructure that allowed you to move to the next level, or if that is a keen observation.
Great question.
So,
go ahead, Roger.
My first company, Snap, was all about Bell Fund, Telephone New Media Fund, tax credits, government subsidies, project to project, feast or famine. Right? The only way I found to get out of that was like tearing off the Band-Aid. I quit. Like, we sold a company, but we just stopped. It was like, we are not doing any more of these government-funded projects because it's hard to get out of it. It's all consuming, and we forced ourselves to come up with a new business idea. That's where Quick Play or mobile business came from. Otherwise you're just stuck in the routine.